What's up, guys? I was just going to say, I think we need a redo. I expect more. I've been here before. I expect more. What's up, guys? Hey, y'all. Thank you, Elizabeth. Hey, y'all. We don't hear that enough where we live. So I got a secret. You cannot tell anybody this. I don't know if they can handle it. This is my favorite church to come to when I'm in America. Shh! It's a secret! Don't tell anybody. No, for real. I love being here because I know so many of you guys because you have come to where we live, and it's a super special treat tonight. Never happened before. This has never, ever been done before here in Columbia First Baptist Church, ever in the history of the church. Amanda Wilhite is in the house. So here's the thing. She will get this microphone in just a second, but I got to do some introduction things. So since we started doing ministry, when we were younger, we've always done things together. But this funny thing happened. She's really good at having babies. No, that's not a secret we're sharing. No. She's really good at it. And she's very, very committed to looking after our children. So the unfortunate part of what our ministry has looked like for so many years now is that I'm the one that has to go out all by myself and do stuff because she's looking after our babies, which I am incredibly thankful for. But now that they are older and they don't have naps anymore, she gets to come along. Now, those of you 7th graders who are here, you're like, dude, we don't even know who you are. Don't know what you're talking about. You're probably the weirdest guy I've ever met. You're talking about your wife having babies and that sort of thing. And anyway, we'll get to some more of that fun stuff later. But we want to tell you a little bit about what we do, why we do it, where we do it. And we got some slides to go along with it. So can we have that first slide up there? Oh. Yep. Yes. No. Anything yet? It's coming. It's coming. I'm checking the reflection in the basketball backboard screen right there. Just a cheat for you worship leaders up there if you ever forget the words. Oh, is that what you... Is that? Yes. Great minds think alike. So good to see you again. Anna was with us in Wales a few weeks ago. Remember? Are you recovered from your jet lag and all that? Okay. Sister girl was there with us. Yep. Have you recovered from... Yeah. Are we there? Oh, yeah, hey. There we are. So, pick yourself out. You may see yourself in this picture. So, this is a picture of some of our best friends in Wales and some of our best friends from Columbia in Wales. And the two peaks behind you are like my two favorite mountains to climb. Pen y Fan and Corndy, they're the two highest peaks in South Wales, and love climbing up them. But, so Amanda and I, we have been married for 15 years. We have been working with young people for, how many? Since probably about 2005, so together for 12 years, yeah. But we did it separately before then as well, so she worked with young girls before, and I was working with young people and children. But for the past 7 years, we have been living overseas in a country called Wales, which the next picture, I think, is a picture of the country. Yes, there it is. Wales is a lovely rainy place. This picture was taken on the day that it didn't rain. There's still cloud cover there. It's home to 3.5 million people. The language of Wales is Welsh, and it's the oldest language spoken in the UK. So older than Scottish, older than Irish, older than other issues. Welsh is the oldest language. And Wales has a rich history of Christian culture going back to like 200 AD, so like for a long time. And this is one of those babies we were talking about earlier. Can you say hello to everybody? Okay. But today, sadly, Wales is one of the least evangelized, least Christian countries in the entire continent of Europe. So 3.5 million people, less than 2% of them have a practicing Christian faith. What's up, Aaron? So Wales is one of these places that God has called us to, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I want to turn it over to Amanda because she's going to share a verse with you guys about sort of the beginning of our journey. There's lots to go through tonight. It's only going to be like 2 hours. Is that okay? Okay. What? Got till 9. Don't want to mess with that guy. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda. She's going to tell a little bit about a verse that kind of really spoke to us in our beginning journey.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Now listen, it's my turn, okay? So don't hog the mic. I guess really before God called us to Wales, for me, fear was a big thing. Has anybody, ever felt like God was calling you to do something, but fear just kind of keeps you from accepting? You're afraid of the what ifs. What if it's too hard? What if if I have to leave my family? And those were real questions for me. Here, let me let you hop down. Go to Dad. Okay. Ooh, there's my hand. Okay. This chair kind of like, yeah. So anyway, for me, that fear was real. And so when Kevin and I met, he was this really nice looking guy. He was the lifeguard at the pool and all these kind of things. And, eventually, it took us a while just because I wasn't picking up on his cues. He would be, I don't know, just, I thought he was just a nice guy. Hey, let's go hang out. You want to go to eat? I'm like, okay, and later on he's like, that was a date. And I was like, well, no, it wasn't. You hang out with girls all the time, so I just thought I was just another one of those girls you're hanging out with. That's true. It is true. What? It's true. Okay, so what he would do is he had a lot of girls that were friends, and he would go out to lunch all the time with them and stuff. You would. Well, yeah, I wasn't saying like. That's all I said. So anyway, this is my story. I have the mic. So I didn't really pick up on the cues. After a while, God spoke to me one night. Kevin, we hadn't even started dating, and he called me up one night. He said, can I come meet your parents? I was like, okay. That was just really weird. So, and I had made a commitment before I met Kevin. I dated a couple guys and never worked out. Always ended up being heartbroken or whatever. And so I made a commitment. I was like, God, I'm not going to date until you bring that one into my life. I'm going to stop picking on myself and messing it up. I'm going to wait till you bring that one you have for me and just do it that way. Just do it the right way, finally. It only took, I don't know, a few years to get it in my head. I know. I got to get to the verse. So anyway, I don't get to do this often. So, that night he came over and talked to my parents. And he didn't say anything to me, no dating stuff. He sat down, he had a conversation with my parents. And my dad, he knows the Bible. He's a very strong Christian, very intimidating. And I had no fear for Kevin to sit and have a conversation with my dad. So I sat there, I was like, and that had never happened before. So it was nice just feeling like I was comfortable with him in my home and talking to my parents. And he went home that night, and I went up to my room, and I said, God, I haven't heard from you. I've made this commitment, and yet I really like this guy, but am I making this happen, or is this you? And so I opened up my Bible that night, and I prayed that prayer, and I was just looking for a verse, something for God to speak to me through. And it was in Isaiah, and it said, this is the way, turn and walk here. And so I knew that night, before Kevin and I ever dated, that he was going to be the one I married. I knew in my heart, God's word doesn't lie. It doesn't, steer you the wrong way. It is what it is. And I knew that night that's how God wanted to speak to me. Long story short. All right, so, after that, we started dating, okay? And, of course, after that, he wanted to marry me. So I said yes after a while. And we started this crazy journey, I was called to youth ministry, and he liked working with kids. You said just a minute ago you like this age. But for a long time, he was all about kids. And I was like, well, I want to work with young girls. Or teenagers, and just be someone that they can talk to. That's all there was to my calling. That's what I wanted to do. And so he also loved mission work. So I thought, well, how is that going to work? I know God's put us together, but how are we going to do missions and youth ministries? We had two separate callings. Funny enough, God put those two callings together, and he was calling us to do youth ministry in another country. So for me, fear was a really big deal. And once I gave God spoke to me and told me, you've got to stop holding back. You've got to let this part of it go. And when I did, God gave me a peace that I know only can come from him, because the fear was real for me. So after we met with Global, we decided, Wells was where God was calling us to. We went and spoke with our pastor, and I was really excited. I thought he would be really supportive and encouraging, and he wasn't. He was really discouraged that we would be leaving the church. He's like, you've got a great ministry here. Why would you leave? Why would you leave these kids? My son's he's coming up to youth. Why would you leave and, not be here for him? And I'm like, I was shocked, because it was so real for me. It was like, well, obviously it's got to be real for everybody else. And that's not always the case. So I went home that day. I was really discouraged, because I knew God had called me, and I didn't need confirmation for myself. It was more for other people. And so I prayed that day. I just sat in my living room floor, and I asked God to give me a verse that I could share with other people. And it was Mark 11, verse 3. I had read Mark 11 the day before, but I'd rushed through it. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to go back and reread Mark 11. And it was the third verse, and it said, why are you... And I asked God, I said, just give me a verse that I can share with other people. And there will be those that say to you, why are you doing this? And you're to say to them, because the Lord has need of it. And I was sent it immediately. And I knew when I read that verse, God doesn't always give us these complex answers. Sometimes it's just simple. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or what anybody else tells you. If this is what God's called you to do, then this is what I have need of. I need you to do this, so do it. And so that verse has been something that has kept us going, that has reminded us, and that we can also share with other people of, well, why Wales? Why would you go to a country like that? They have, Xboxes and iPads and all this kind of stuff. But for those that you have come and you've seen, spiritually, there's nothing, So I'm finished now.
Okay, so just to get the record straight. Okay, so you had these fears, very afraid of different sorts of stepping out, following God. You met this really cool guy who was definitely not a ladies' man, let it be known, just happened to have a lot of girls who were friends. Amanda was my first girlfriend, thank you very much. So, not a ladies' man. Like, we didn't have Facebook in the day, so we couldn't make it official. And whenever she got to these points, whenever you got to these points where you were afraid, or you had questions, or you had concerns, there's sort of a pattern. What did you do?
I prayed. Is that what you were looking for? Read my Bible.
You can tell we've rehearsed this really well. Yes, so whenever you got to these places where you were really fearful about what does this relationship with God mean, and what might it require of you, and then what does it mean actually to walk in this relationship, you turned to God through prayer. So you talked to him, and you also turned to Scripture, so you let him speak to you. So you actually engaged in this relationship, because that's how a relationship works. Girls, if you're the relationship that the guy you have with right now doesn't talk to you, that's not a relationship. There's got to be conversation going both ways, and vice versa. Guys, girl's not talking to you. Just give it up. That picture on your wall, you're in the friend zone, man. Sorry, it's just the way it is. So I hope you're getting this picture that we were both a couple tortured teenagers. Is that the picture that you're sort of getting? Amanda and I were both these tortured teenagers, struggling, growing up in church, but struggling with what does it mean for us to know what God was calling us to do. And even now, we're both, she's 22, she's, 36. Never. That's right. The lady never reveals her age, But because we're in this place where we are older, we still feel very much like we are younger. And as working with young people, we still wrestle with these sort of issues of what does it mean to be me? What does it mean to live out the calling that God has placed on my life? And what does it mean to know, like, a direction to go in? How can we actually know what does this thing look like? How does this work? And because we're from the United States, and because of our partnership with Global Youth Ministry, which they do camps, obviously if you guys have been to a global camp, you know what it's all about. We do conferences, and if you just drive down, the I-24, or you drive down 840 or whatever, Highway 78 in my town, you just drive down the road, you're going to see billboards that'll say something as simple as Jesus. Have you seen something like that before? A billboard. It just says Jesus. You may not think anything of it because you see it all the time. But your mind and your subconscious takes notice. And it is a gentle reminder that there is more in this world than just what we are living for. And all of these things are very prevalent here in the United States, especially in the South, the Bible Belt. If you're coming down Pulaski Highway from Columbia, before you get to this church, how many churches do you have to pass by before you get to this one? Honestly, I don't know. Does somebody know? It's not like a trivia question. 4 or 5. Let's just say quite a few. All of the churches are involved in doing different things in the community. Obviously, this church here does a lot of stuff in the community. But where we were really interested in is, where are there no churches? Or where are there ineffective churches? Or where are there no reminders? Where are young people really struggling with what does it mean to know God and to live out that relationship? That's really what God impressed upon our hearts. We wanted to be in that place where there was nothing. And that led us to Wales. In the county that we live in, Rhondda and Taft, there's 270,000 people who live in the county. A little less than a third, probably about 20% are under the age of 30. So I would consider that a young person. And of that age group, less than 2% are involved in church or have a faith whatsoever. So when you look at like what does it mean to reach an unreached people group, and they put up a statistic of what an unreached people group looks like, the young people in Wales fall into that category. The same as people who've never heard about Jesus before. They're sort of this category of unreached because it's such a small population. And as tortured teenagers growing up in a Christian environment, trying to find what does it mean to fulfill this calling that we felt God has put on our hearts, it led us deeper into this relationship with Him. And so tonight, this is not trying to convince you that every one of you needs to be out on the mission field. God may have something totally different for you. All we are doing is just wanting to share our journey. Where were we? Where have we been? Where are we now? Where do we think the future might be? But more importantly, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know which college is right for you? How do you know which relationship is right for you? If you're supposed to have one at all. How do you know what job you need to be looking for? How do you know these things? So we're going to share some of our stories. We're going to share some of our adventures in Wales, some of the things that we've learned, some of the experiences that we've had working with young people. Because something that we've discovered in working overseas is that wherever you go in the world, teenagers and young people are pretty much the same. They want the same things. You want to feel like your life has value, that you're a valued person, and you want to know what your purpose is. In other words, does my life mean something? Am I here? Am I worth anything? And what am I supposed to do? Now that I'm here, what am I supposed to do with this life? You know, you can boil down what the teenage years is into those two fairly broad categories, but I think we may all sort of relate to that. What does it mean to be me? So we're going to just tell you a little bit about the people that we work with, share some scripture verses with you, and we're going to just be back and forth if that's okay with you guys. It's not going to be 2 hours, I promise. That was just a joke. And yes, my lovely wife has so carefully reminded me that we are going to open it up for some questions afterward. So if you have any questions or whatnot. So let's go to the next slide. And we want to talk about what does it mean to take the gospel to unreached people in Wales. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So when God called us, we felt, youth ministry was what we wanted to do. We soon found out that when we got there, to just work with youth, we were missing something. Because once kids get to that age, it's very difficult for them to, change their ways, change their life. They're set with their friends, how they do things, partying, all that kind of stuff, and they're not interested in changing. And so our church had no kids program. So Sundays, basically, we were babysitting. It was our 3 kids, and that we were busy keeping them quiet. So that was very difficult for me because I felt like I was going to church to be a babysitter. And I was like, there's got to be something that we can do, because we meet in the scout hall, and then beside there's this community center building, which sometimes it's occupied, so we don't always have it. But anyway, we talked to our pastor. We said, we really need to do something about this. Our family's really struggling with the way things are. And if we don't do something, we might have to, look at what can we do differently. Do we need to go somewhere else? So they were very willing to help us out with that. And I told them, I said, if you want us to do this, I'll be more than happy to head it up. I never felt called to kids ministry, but I was willing to take that on because I felt like there was a huge need. And because if we could get in with kids at a young age and get them comfortable with who we are and what we do and who this guy Jesus is, and help them see that it's not something they have to be so afraid of. It's not something so foreign to them. reading a Bible is not just like, what in the world? They actually know what they're reading. And so that was our plan, is to just go to the basics. I mean, these kids don't know Jesus loves me. They don't have any church background whatsoever. And so we do a kids live on Wednesday nights. Not kids live, kids club is on Wednesday night, sorry. And we started, we make this list and let the kids write down what it is they want to do. And so then our leaders, we get together and we discuss the topics, and some of these things they write down are just off the wall, ideas. And we're like, okay, how can we make this happen? And so we write all these down, and we make up a schedule last time we did the whole year and planned it all out. And I've got a great group of kids that help me out with that. And so we do all these crazy fun things because we want the kids to know that we want to get to know them. We want to have fun with them. It's about that relationship. That's what it is. It's building that relationship when they're young. We have water fights, and you were there for that one, weren't you? Yeah, that was fun. And the kids, the part of it is getting the adults out there and actually getting them in there with the kids. And we have just as much fun. I wish, I can't show you the video, but we had this one night where we played this game that I won't go into it. It was so much fun. This kid did the wackiest things. But anyway, it's fun. These kids, they're not afraid to just let loose and do weird things. And so I love that about kids. I love the innocence that they have, and I've really enjoyed working with them. Sometimes it's a little bit of a break from the youth age because they get so serious, And so anyway, over here we've got this bottom picture up here. This is most recent. Our kids' life, which is on Sunday mornings. We've started doing Bible drills, learning scripture, teaching them songs, things that will stick with them. It's basic stuff, but I think it's so important to teach kids the basics and not always go away from that. And so we've started collecting money. I want the kids to have a sense of charity, be able to, giving to other people. And so we collect this money in this big jar. They have little jars, and so every Sunday they bring their little jars in, and we put it in the big jar. And as that money builds up, we can do a party, and I let them pick the party. So last time it was a pizza/slime party. So we ate pizza while we made slime. So, kids are creative like that, so we let them go with it. But anyway, so the kids, this last charity, I was like, what can we do? One time we raised enough money, our first one, we raised enough money for 32 young girls to get medical equipment. And you think, what can a bunch of about 10 or 15 kids do? But they can really do a lot. And this last time, this one little girl in the front, she has a little certificate in her hands. She doesn't go to church. Her family doesn't go to church. And I wanted to, but she's been on her own working very hard for a homeless organization. She's been creating fundraisers. She's been collecting money. She's been collecting goods to give to this organization to give to the homeless, all on her own initiative. And I thought, we could show her that her local church supports her. And so I talked to her mom, and I said, we would really like to give this money to her, to the organization she's working for. So, and they were just over the moon excited, thought, wow, that's really kind of you to do that. Our kids worked really hard, and they raised about 262 pounds, which is, over $300 for about 10 kids bringing in their little change each week, And I thought, what a great opportunity. And our middle child, Addie, she loves giving. So if we see a homeless person sitting outside, in Cardiff or whatever, we like to give her money to give to him because it's a big deal for her, to be able to see that it's okay, to give and things like that. So anyway, kids are important. And one thing, I guess, through this whole little spill is just because you have a passion for one thing, you feel called to youth ministry, or, don't shortchange God, because just because he calls you to one area, it might be, in our experience, it's kids ministry. It's whatever he puts before us. It's about being available to God and what he wants you to do, no matter what he calls you to do.
And another thing about Jasmine, if you were to meet Jasmine, she might be one of the shyest people you would ever meet. She won't talk to you. She is very, very timid. And I was reading in Corinthians the other day, and it just hit me that, how many of you guys are shy? You don't have to put your hand up because you won't anyway. Some of you will get it on the way home. If you're shy, you feel like you get overlooked sometimes. You may feel like you're not noticed. You're not the loud person. You're not the outgoing person. Maybe you don't have a sport that everybody can see you do, or a skill that everybody can see that you are good at, or whatever. You have these things that you know that you can do, or maybe you're not sure what you can or cannot do, and you're shy, and you're wondering, will I ever get noticed, or what can I actually do? And I want to read you something out of Corinthians. So the guy who wrote like 2/3 of the New Testament is a guy named Paul. Huge guy, right? Not huge guy. He was actually short. Paul actually saw it was a sort of nickname, which means short. But he wrote like 2/3 of the New Testament. Like this book that we've been reading for 2,000 years. He wrote like 2/3 of it. Listen to this. In 2 Corinthians 10. Paul is saying, by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, I appeal to you. I, Paul, who am timid when face to face with you. Did you catch that? I, Paul, who am timid when face to face with you. He goes on to say, am bold towards you when I'm away. Now, he's not like one of these keyboard champions who's trolling people on social media and thinks that they're giants behind the keyboard or whatever. He recognized that his gift was not in speaking to big groups. He recognized that his gift was in writing. And because he did that, he recognized that gift. He was able to use that for God. Now, this young girl, Jasmine, she has a compassionate heart to help people. And so we find it very important to try to encourage her to pursue that aspect of who she is. And our desire is to somehow, as a church, to sort of help her see that what she can do on her own is one thing, but if she were really to give that over to God, what could he do with that? And that sort of leads me to our next slide. One of the things that we've been really committed to in the past 8 years living in Wales is discipleship. Is actually meeting together as a group, whoever can meet as a group, opening up our Bibles. I know you're captivated already. Reading it, you're so excited. You're on pins and needles. And then talking about it. Doesn't that sound exciting? Some people it might sound exciting. If someone told me that when I was in middle school, when I was like early on, like 14, 15, if my youth pastor invited me over to his house for a Bible study, I'd be like, no thanks, dude. If I can't run around, if I can't jump on something, if I can't shoot somebody, if we go play James Bond, Nintendo 64, yeah, I'm on like GoldenEye. Anyone GoldenEye in 64? I am old. I can't even say Halo because I think that was like, that's old school now. If Halo's not old school? Oh, okay. Halo, anyone? Halo parties? Yeah, okay. All right, so here we go. Man. Girls, help me out. Well, I can't say girls because your niece Tristan is like a huge gamer. She's like all about it. So girls can be gamers too. Yeah. Girls can be gamers too. Where are we at? Okay. We are talking about discipleship, right? What does that word actually mean? discipleship. And actually, the best way to understand it is like Nachfolge. Do you guys know that? It's German. Nachfolge? No. So, my dad and I, we used to work with wood a lot. My dad was always the kind of person that was, when we were younger. Much younger. He's too old for that now. But I remember the first time I ever picked up this thing called a wood plane. I don't know if you've ever seen this wood plane. But it's this device that you just scrape along the top of a piece of wood, and it smooths the wood, right? So my dad handed me this wood plane one time. He says, all right, we're going to work on this piece of wood. We're going to smooth it out. So I take this plane, and I just do this thing right there. And I just jam it into the wood, and I make this huge gaping cut and scar the wood. And my dad was like, okay, let's try this again. So what he did is he took the plane, he put my hand on the plane, and then he put his hand on mine, and we pushed it together. And he said, now, Kevin, I want you to just close your eyes. And we pushed it again. And he said, I want you to get and just feel this motion, right? And start thinking about, you can tell when it's doing what it's supposed to do. And then he pulled some of these little wood chips up, and he showed me what this sort of wood chip was supposed to look like when you've planed at appropriate depth that leaves a sort of curly thing off of it. And you get this nice, smooth surface on the wood. This was something that he already knew how to do. But in order to help me learn how to do it, he did it with me. And he put me right in there doing it. This is what discipleship is. Discipleship is, from a Christian standpoint, is learning what does it mean to be like Christ. How can we walk in the footsteps of Jesus? How can we be like Jesus? This person who our whole faith is based on. So over the past 7 years, that's looked like many different things. One of those has been reading Scripture. Other times, it's going out and doing things. I know when you were listening to Amanda now, she said several different things. She said fun. She said games. She said, what else? Help me out. What were some other things that she said?
Water fights. What you don't see is in this picture up here in the corner. I'm actually kind of standing funny because nobody realized that I had a big bottle of water in my hand. So everybody was only dry after that for about 2 seconds because I just took the water bottle and just threw it up over everybody's head. And then that started just a huge water fight. And one of our friends, he was there visiting us. I thought I had everybody soaking wet. Well, he comes out with a cup of flour and just poured flour all over me, and I was already wet, so it created this paste. Sorry, but that's all.
So in other words, it is okay to be a Christian and have fun. It is okay in this discipleship. Everything is not serious teaching or obeying. There's this activity of walking together, of doing these things together, of living life together, of valuing people over some sort of result or product. One of the difficulties that we face in Wales is that because Christianity is such a foreign concept to so many people, is that we don't see a lot of people give their lives to Jesus and come to faith. We just don't see a lot of it because the process is so long. But what we have been able to see and what we have been able to count as successes is that attitudes have been changed. Where people who were so against, anything that Jesus had to do with their lives, they started listening. And now even their parents are interested in it. And so we see attitudes have shifted, and we know that that's only the beginning of something that is going to change the culture in general. All right, let's look at the next picture here. Okay, here's another thing that I'm super duper stoked about. How many of you guys have a smartphone? If you have a smartphone, go ahead and take your smartphone out. You are allowed to, I promise, Go ahead and clear your notifications. I'm sure that phone is really smart, but I don't know how smart. If you have a smartphone like I do, you could download an app that us youth pastors in Wales have developed to help young people understand more about what this walking with Jesus means. It's called Stuffed. It's on the App Store. It's on the Android market. STFT. You can look it up. It looks like this when you download it. This is what the screen looks like. Spiritual Tools for Teens, right? Once you've downloaded this thing, you can then, hey, yeah, we got lights too. You can then investigate more about what it means to be a Christian. Now, when I did my ministerial training, they did not teach us how to develop apps to help young people. When I did my original training 18 years ago, I was listening to lectures on cassette tape. Anybody cassette tapes? Yeah, cassette tapes. Not like these cool vinyl discs that everybody's buying now. This came after that. Cassette tapes. They didn't teach me how to use technology to reach people with the gospel. This is something that we kind of just saw was a huge hole. There was a huge hole. Just like Amanda noticed that with the young people, not reaching them as children, that was a hole in the ministry. And this is a leadership principle. A leader is not someone who tells people what to do. They can be. But a leader is someone who recognizes problems and figures out solutions. You see a problem, you see a hole somewhere, and you figure out a solution. Have you guys downloaded the app yet? Because you're going to need it in about 5 minutes. You'll need the app in about 5 minutes. I won't tell you all that's on there. We're still in the beginning stages of it. Compared to some other apps out there, it is really bad. I'm not going to lie. But I am so super excited about it because young people are downloading this and are using it to grow in their own walk. So this is just some pictures of us next to the stuffed banner. And we take it around to the schools. The teachers love it. It's great. All right, what's next on the picture chart there? Okay. Do you want to talk about Dan? No, you go ahead. I'm in the picture, so you can talk about Dan.
Okay. If I mess up, you can add something to it. All right, so Dan's been coming to our Summer Shine, which is our VBS. Before we came, he was, a kid that came and was a part, and then he's a leader and everything. Great family. His mom's a pastor with the Salvation Army, or an officer is what they call him. And how many years ago was it that he got saved? So he gave his life to Christ, but I think he struggled. Salvation is a free gift that anybody can be saved. When it comes to following God, there's a cost, there's a price. And that's when people fall short, because when they have to start thinking about, I got to give this up and give this up, it gets a lot harder because it starts costing you something. And so for Dan, I think that's where he was. There was sin in his life, things that he was realizing that God was convicting him about. And he got to a point where he's like, I've just let it go. I've got these addictions and things going on in my life, and I need to get rid of it. And he called Kevin up. He said, I want to be baptized. Dan knows being baptized doesn't mean, he's getting saved. That was something he already committed to do, but he wanted to make it public. He wanted everybody to know that it was real to him, and he was ready to start living his life that way. And so we don't have a baptismal pool. And so Dan was like, hey, let's go to the ocean. And as many of you can agree with me, it was freezing cold. really cold in July. But that didn't stop Dan or Kevin, you know. We were like, yeah, Kev, you go on out there and do that. We'll stand back here and watch. So, but no, it was an awesome experience because Dan is, you know, I can't remember exactly what it was he said, but it really touched me as far as just how real what he said. You know, sometimes someone can get up and they can share about their personal walk, and you can just tell within your spirit that it's real. And that's how I felt when Dan got up and shared, you know, and got out there and made a commitment in front of, I don't know how many people. We had, 70 people or so. So, you know, and like I said, for him to make that commitment there, you know, salvation is, I don't want to say easy, but it's kind of the first step. And Dan took that several years ago. And for a lot of kids, you know, that first step is so hard if they ever get to that step. But actually getting past that first step is so difficult because it comes with a big cost for them. You're talking their friends, which I know y'all know that, their families. It's just it's just non-existent there, and it's difficult. But thanks to teams like you that come over, and I agree with Kevin. You know, your church has just been fantastic. When you come over, we've had a great team every single time, and really appreciate what y'all put into it. But these kids, what happens is you think, well, I'm only there for a week. What kind of change does that make? But how many of you, I know, still talk to our kids? You know, I know, Chelsea, you do. They talk about you all the time. And, you know, I appreciate that because there might be a way that you can minister to them that I can't or that Kevin can't, that they feel comfortable talking to you about something that maybe they don't anybody else. And that's what's so important is you think you come for a week, what can I do? But, you know, you can keep praying for those kids. You can keep in contact with them now through Facebook and Snapchat and I don't know what else there is out there. But that's what makes a difference. And then these kids, what happens is y'all go home, and because you came over and you really reached out to these kids and it meant something to them, they want to come back and find out more, see what else is going on, see what else we have. And so you might not be there for all the fruit. We might not get to see all the fruit, but it's there, and we really appreciate what y'all do for this ministry, for the people of Wales. Is that good? No.
We're going to do some question and answer in just a second, but when I was like 15, 16 years old, I never thought anyone was paying attention to me. I never thought anyone was looking at me. I never thought anyone thought anything about my life. But I was wrong. And if you're sitting here tonight and you're thinking, you know what, no one takes notice of me. No one notices what's going on in my life. I can tell you you're wrong. For those of you who are shy, that's a horrible thought. People are watching you. People are watching how you live your life. I know this not just from personal experience, but also know this because of Dan. Darren, how many baptisms have you guys had this year? Baptisms. A dozen. Yeah, a dozen. How many of those were young people? 2, 3? Okay, 3. That's still pretty good. So 2017, the last time we had a baptism was 2013. And Dan was there. But he wasn't in the water. He was standing on the shore watching. He was watching this young man named Josh. Josh was a young man who didn't think anybody paid attention to him either. He thought there was no one out there who cared about him. He thought his life was so bad that when he was about 14 years old, he decided he wanted to kill himself. And he had made plans. And God had other plans. Because on the day that he had decided he was going to take his own life, God sent me to that school to share a verse. Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 and 5. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. before you were born, I set you apart. I read that in the school. It spoke to Josh's heart. He said, I want to know more about that. He started hanging out with us. He gave his life to Jesus. And we did a seaside baptism in 2013. And Dan was there. And Dan saw the change in Josh's life. Now, I'm not going to get into all this theology about what baptism was, but Josh, since he became a believer, has been a different person. And Dan has been watching him. If you think your life is going unnoticed right now, I can guarantee you there's somebody who is watching you. And one thing I like to tell young people, even if you don't think you're a leader, I want you to know that you are a leader. Because a leader is a person who makes decisions that affect other people. And what you do with your life is a decision that will affect other people, because you don't know who's watching. I was a young person who was changed because I watched others. It made me a different person. God was at work in all of this. The Holy Spirit was at work within me. But when I finally realized that there was something about me that God thought was pretty cool enough to put me on this planet, to give me the life that he gave me, once I really grabbed hold of that, I was off to the races. And I haven't looked back. It hasn't been easy. Amanda and I, we've been living overseas as missionaries for 7 years. You'd be probably embarrassed to find out how much money we actually earn and what we live off of compared to maybe what your parents earn, and how we run an international ministry off of that, to where we've presented the gospel to probably more than 10,000 teenagers. We do it because God has so inspired us to live as Christ lived, but there is nothing else on this world that can replace what we feel in our hearts when we are following him. We were set to retire as multimillionaires, and we gave it all up. I'm not saying that to make anything of us. I want you to understand, we have found something better, more fulfilling, and something that when other people watch our lives and they meet Jesus, they are changed too. And one day, whenever it is that God calls us away from Wales, we will be able to look back and walk away and say, look, we left nothing on the table. We did everything we could. We didn't win every time. In fact, we probably lost more than we won. But we went. And we did what we could. The parable that Jesus tells about the talents, this rich man gives these guys gifts, these talents, and he says, go and do something with them. To one he gave 1, to one he gave 2, to one he gave 5 or whatever. The one who had 5 doubled it and made 10. The one who had 2 doubled it and made 4. The one who had 1 hid it and buried it in the ground. And he came back and he said, now what have you done with what I have given you? And to the one that had 5 and made 10, he said, well done. To the one who had 2 and made 4, he said, well done. To the one that had 1 and buried it in the ground and did nothing with it, he said, you wicked, lazy servant. Do you know what's incredible about that story? God didn't judge them on what they didn't have. He didn't judge the guy who had 1 because he didn't have 5. He said, what are you doing with the 1? The one who had 2, he didn't judge him on what he didn't have. He said, what are you doing with the 2? You can look around at all your friends and you can see all that they have or all that they're good at. And you compare yourself to them and you think, you know what? If I could be like that, if I had that, I would just do more. No. And God's not concerned with that either. He wants to know, what are you doing with what you got? He made you just who you are. We figured this out. We learned this. It has changed our lives. The young people that we work with, we have tried to teach them this and help them understand this. And we're seeing it change their lives. I know Darren really well, and I know all the other adults here because I talk to them, and I know they're trying to help you guys learn this too. Some of you are close. Some of you got a little bit more to go. Some of you don't care. That's okay. But for those of you who are close, I just want to encourage and say, you know what, you need to just take that a little bit more of a step. Just take a little bit more authority over the life that God has given you and use what you got for him. Right. I don't know. Do we have time for some questions? Okay. We'll take a few minutes. All right. If you got the app, this is how we're going to do this. On the app, down at the bottom right-hand side, there's a contact us thing. On that contact us thing, if you got a question that you'd like for us to answer, send it in. Write it in there in the enter your message here box and send it in, and we'll start answering some of these questions. So be quick. You can leave your information if you want to, or you don't have to leave your information. That's cool too. If you want to ask an anonymous question, like, is Amanda a good kisser? You can ask that. I won't answer, though. Never kiss and tell. Us gentlemen, right? If you don't have the app and you want to ask a question, you can do that. You just have to shout it out. The old-fashioned way. All right, we got our first one. All it says is a name. There's nothing in there. So we know who you are. It's not Rob. But that's good. Whoever sent that message, good job. You did it. You sent the message. Ask a question next time. If you don't have any questions, that's cool too. La-da-dee, la-da-da. Okay, hey, we got a couple come. They're rolling in now. All right, I'm going to hand this over to you. I'm going to ask you the questions, okay? Actually, all right, hey, too much. Slow down there. Okay, first question. This is definitely a question for you, Amanda. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
I don't know. $700. You really savor your lollipops, don't you? I like to just bite into it.
Okay, next question. How you doing? All right, literally, how are you doing today? That's the question.
I'm fine. How are you?
Fantastic. Okay, next one. How were you introduced to Global?
Okay. Well, this is Kevin. Actually, the summer we started dating, he was going to intern with Global. You know how they do summer staff? Well, that's what he was going to do. And like, we had just started talking. He's like, "Hey, I'm going away for the summer." I was like, "Oh, great." So my first encounter with Global was not great because it was taking away the guy I really liked. So we drove up to Tennessee when it was AmeriCamp then, wasn't it? So it was AmeriCamp way long ago. Anyway, and so we dropped Kevin off, and I was so sad. Like, we were with his parents, and I remember riding back home and crying quietly in the back. And then I had his schedule for the whole summer, and I was following. I was like marking out each week, hoping soon he'd come back home. And we were supposed to get, sorry, what's going on? Anyway, so that's Kevin. his church went to summer camp with Global, and that's how he knew Roger, and he thought, oh, I'll hang out with him. And so, so then when we got together, he wanted, and he was the youth pastor at our church. He wanted to take our kids to Global, and so that's how and it was through their summer camps they started talking about the mentor program, and that's how God spoke to us that we needed to go through them. So.
Okay, awesome. Here's another question. What has been the biggest challenge working with youth?
With you? I can answer that right now. No, just kidding. With youth, I think, well, I guess sometimes the ups and downs, you know, like you feel like, oh, this youth is really getting it, and all of a sudden they're gone, or, you know, just sometimes the disappointment. But it also can be the best thing, too, because it teaches you patience. God's put some difficult youth in our lives over the years, and sometimes I just want to wring their necks, you know. But then I find out God has used those people in my life to show me things about patience, about love, about compassion. And some of those students have turned out to be my favorite. As they've gotten older, they've grown and matured, and it takes patience, and it takes commitment, and it takes longevity, you know. So anyway.
And what she means by favorite is that we love all of our students equally, just like any good youth pastor would. Yeah. Okay, next question. Biggest need you have right now?
A new car. I'm just kidding. Just throw that out there. Just kidding. Just, you know, we're really trying to get an intern program started. You know, we'll have our interns like Evan. You know, he's all right. We have, I know, see, exactly. We have these interns come over for short periods of time, and we are trying to get some to come over more long.